They kicked him out because he was black and because he didn't look the part. No questions asked. No room check. No second glance. Just one look at his skin, one scan of his clothes, and suddenly the five-star lobby treated him like a threat. Security was called before he said a word. His prepaid suite was mysteriously canceled. Guests stared like he was trespassing in their version of luxury. And as they pushed him toward the door, one manager's voice echoed behind him. People like that don't belong here. But what they didn't know was who he really was. This isn't just a story about racism. It's about what happens when the people you humiliate quietly hold more power than you could ever imagine. You think you know how this ends? You don't. Not yet. Watch closely. Listen carefully. And don't blink, because when the truth hits, it hits hard. If this opening hit you, hit back. Like the video. Subscribe for more true story thrillers that expose injustice. And tell us in the comments, what part of the world are you watching from? And how would you have reacted if this happened right in front of you? The moment Marcus Knox stepped through the revolving doors of the Marlowe Grand, the air shifted. Not because he made a scene, he didn't. He moved with quiet confidence, the kind you develop when you've had to earn every inch of space in rooms not built for you. His boots clicked against imported marble, and his coat, long and black with a wool collar, brushed just above his polished jeans. A leather duffel rested on his shoulder. No logos, no flash, just clean, functional style. He looked around, scanning the opulence, golden chandeliers, high archways, an onyx concierge desk, a sculpture of cascading glass behind reception. It smelled like lemongrass and exclusivity. But overhead, nestled into the trim of a decorative molding, a small black orb tracked him as he moved. Facial recognition software activated in real time, cross-referencing Marcus's features with the reservation system. Within seconds, a red indicator flashed across the hotel's private security interface. Profile matched. Marcus D. Knox status. Confirmed. Flagged. Non-VIP compliance. Action required. Julia, the guest services manager behind the desk, saw the notification appear on her side monitor. It wasn't visible to the average guest, but this screen wasn't meant for them. It was the hotel's internal AI-enhanced visual cohesion system, a tool designed to quietly filter out aesthetic mismatches. In plain English, guests who didn't fit the brand image. Marcus looked up at the chandelier, then toward the reception, unaware he'd just triggered the second filter, behavioral analytics. The system logged his 10-second pause near the art wall as loitering. A second alert chimed. Risk prediction algorithm possible intent TO breach luxury display. Security escalation advised. Julia stiffened. She looked at Marcus again, this time not as a guest, but as a profile. The algorithm had spoken. A potential disruption. She tapped a small button beneath the desk. Discreet. Across the lobby, a suited man with an earpiece began to rise from a velvet-backed chair near the elevators. Marcus reached the counter. His voice was warm but efficient. Checking in. Marcus Knox. Reservation should be under Knox, penthouse suite. Julia didn't smile. Just a moment, she said, typing as if the system hadn't already told her everything. On her screen, his ID was valid, payment processed 3 days ago. But next to his name, the system had stamped a blinking yellow bar. Verify identity manually. Style deviation detected. She pretended to search. I'm not finding your reservation immediately. Did you book directly through us? I booked through the corporate line, Marcus answered, already sensing something was off. 3 nights. Confirmed by your sales director, Aaron Castillo. 1 moment, she said again. Behind her back, she pinged security with 1 word, standby. Marcus set down his wallet and ID on the marble counter. There shouldn't be a problem. It's not a problem, she replied carefully. We just occasionally need to verify credentials when things don't match our system. His eyes narrowed. Things. It's protocol, sir. Julia replied, already avoiding eye contact. I'll just need to call my supervisor. The security officer was approaching slowly now, trying to make it look like coincidence. Security hovered nearby, pretending to monitor foot traffic. though their earpieces buzzed with internal chatter. Moments later, the front doors of the Marlowe Grand swept open again, admitting a tall white man dressed in a tailored linen blazer and camel-colored slacks. He carried no luggage, just a phone in one hand and designer sunglasses perched confidently on his head. Julia's spine straightened. The man gave her a practiced half-smile as he approached the counter. "Reservation under Marcus Knox," he said smoothly. Julia blinked, confusion flashing for just a moment before she recovered. "Of course, sir," she said brightly, not realizing her own reflex had accepted the man's claim without hesitation. She typed in the name again, then paused. Her screen read, "Marcus Knox, checked in." But that didn't stop her. "Apologies for the delay, Mr. Knox. We've just finished preparing your suite. Penthouse level. May I offer a complimentary champagne during your wait?" The man smiled, clearly used to such treatment. "Sounds perfect." At that moment, a bellhop appeared, summoned with just a glance. Julia handed over a second keycard, an override duplicate issued without corporate clearance. "Please escort Mr. Knox to the penthouse suite." The bellhop nodded and motioned for the man to follow. As they walked away, Julia made a quick note in the system. "Override. VIP courtesy. Duplicate key issued under assumption of clerical error." She convinced herself this was temporary, just until the real confusion cleared up. The actual Marcus Knox was already upstairs, unaware of what was unfolding beneath him. And the impostor was now being led directly to the very room meant to reflect his success, his identity, and his earned status. 30 minutes passed. The real Marcus had just finished placing his duffel neatly in the walk-in closet of the penthouse. He stepped onto the balcony overlooking the skyline, unaware that a stranger had been led to a second penthouse on the opposite end of the same floor under his name. Meanwhile, in the lobby, another wave of awkwardness was building. A new front desk agent, Ben, who had come on shift to relieve Julia, looked at the suite inventory and frowned. "Hey," he said quietly, "weren't we holding suite 4201 for Mr. Knox?" Julia hesitated. "It's been reassigned," she said too quickly. "There was an error. Someone else arrived, same name. We didn't catch the mismatch until after check-in." Ben stared at her. "But the system shows it's been verified. Facial match. ID confirmed. You overrode it." Julia avoided his eyes. "It's been handled. Don't make it a thing." Ben didn't argue, but he opened the suite log quietly and began to check the guest profiles. As he did, a notification lit up from the internal security review system. Camera 12, a guest access audit pending. Curious, he clicked the alert and watched a short clip. It showed the real Marcus checking in, ID, reservation number, everything accurate. Then, 28 minutes later, it showed the second man, the impostor, approaching the desk, claiming the same name and being escorted to the very suite Marcus had paid for. Ben's eyes widened. "Julia," he said under his breath, "this is going to get us sued." Julia waved him off. "He's already upstairs. Let it go." But things didn't stay quiet for long. At 3:47 p.m., a new guest arrived, Mrs. Lillian Hargrave, a regular donor to the Marlowe's annual gala and friend to several board members. Her assistant was flustered, pacing near the desk. "You gave away her suite," she snapped. "She books 4201 every spring. Where is it?" Julia stammered. "We had a booking error. The system double assigned it." The assistant's eyes narrowed. "Then get whoever's in out." But before Julia could explain further, Ben leaned in. "You might want to come look at this." He tapped the surveillance monitor and played the clip again. Julia's face went pale. There, in crisp detail, was her handing over the penthouse key to a man who had never shown ID, never been verified, and had simply claimed a name. Upstairs, meanwhile, Marcus finally received a call on the room line. "Sir," said the voice of another concierge, hesitant, "are you currently in suite 4201? Marcus frowned. "No, I'm in 4302. "Why?" There was a pause. "Then someone else is using your reservation ID under your name, and housekeeping just flagged an inconsistency." Marcus set the phone down, the pieces clicking into place. He wasn't angry, yet. but his eyes sharpened. He had been followed, profiled, displaced, and now impersonated. That wasn't just an insult. That was a violation. The younger staffer gave him a subtle nod, something between apology and warning. Marcus didn't slow down. He walked past the concierge desk and into the West Lounge, a gleaming bar area reserved for premium guests, all glass walls and soft jazz, where exclusive labels were poured like water. The bartender, a tall blonde man with a tight vest and tighter smile, didn't acknowledge Marcus as he approached. Instead, he busied himself polishing a highball glass that was already spotless. Marcus waited. Nothing. The man continued moving, turned, and began preparing a drink for a couple who had walked in after him. "Excuse me," Marcus said, voice polite but firm. "Can I see a menu?" The bartender didn't respond, just reached under the counter, placed a drink napkin in front of the new guests, and kept going. Marcus repeated, slightly louder this time, "Excuse me, am I invisible, or is there some kind of service cutoff I missed?" The bartender finally glanced over, eyes flicking from Marcus's face to the badge clipped at his belt. "This lounge is for VIP tier guests only," he said, carefully, each word chosen like a step on thin ice. "Suite 4302, Marcus replied flatly. "Penthouse level. I think that qualifies." The man blinked, unsure, then hesitated. "That suite was reassigned earlier. Your name's not currently attached to the reservation in our bar's guest log." Marcus exhaled slowly. "That's because your front desk made a mistake, and now you're compounding it with something that looks a lot like discrimination." The bartender said nothing, but his posture stiffened. Then Marcus noticed it, barely visible behind the ornamental shelf of liquor bottles, a small dome camera, its lens glowing red, recording, zooming, on him, not the guests, not the bar, just him. "You're watching me?" Marcus asked, tone quiet, eyes fixed on the lens. "Is that what this is?" The bartender didn't answer. He simply turned and began wiping down the already clean bar again. Before Marcus could press further, movement by the entrance caught his eye. A hotel bellhop rolled 2 Louis Vuitton trunks across the marble. Behind him walked a middle-aged white couple, expensively dressed, sunglasses still perched on their heads despite being indoors. The woman wore a cashmere shawl and held a room card between her fingers like a boarding pass. The man, stocky with salt and pepper hair, chuckled to himself as he nudged his wife playfully. "It's about time," he said. "Flight was a mess. At least the room will be perfect." Marcus watched as the couple approached Julia, who was now back at the desk, posture rigid. The man leaned on the counter, clearly unbothered by the tension that had simmered earlier. "Checking in, Hollingsworth. We should be in 4201, he said confidently. Julia paused for only a second, then offered a smile Marcus could tell was forced. "Yes, Mr. Hollingsworth. We've prepared the suite. You're all set." Marcus froze. That was his suite, the one his name had been on, the one he had paid for weeks in advance, the one currently listed falsely as reassigned due to a system discrepancy. But now it was being handed off to a new couple who had just arrived. No apology, no questions, no hesitation. The realization wasn't a gut punch, it was confirmation. They hadn't just taken his room. They'd saved it for someone else. Someone they thought belonged more. He stepped away from the bar, eyes still on the couple, and made his way back toward the front desk. As he passed by a side wall, he caught his reflection in the brass inlay. He didn't look out of place. He looked successful, composed, sharp. But in their eyes, his skin was still a disruption to their curated narrative of wealth and exclusivity. The security camera above shifted again, tracked him as he walked. He pretended not to notice, but inside, the temperature of his patience had dropped below freezing. He approached Julia directly. "Excuse me," he said, voice low and steady. "When exactly was Suite 4201 reassigned?" She looked up, eyes wide. "Mr. Knox, don't lie," he cut in, calm but cutting. "I know who you just gave it to." She hesitated, then offered the most corporate excuse she could reach for. It was a decision based on loyalty status. "Mr. Hollingsworth is a returning platinum tier guest, and our system prioritizes repeat." Bull. Marcus snapped quietly. "You reassigned my room after flagging my profile." Then handed it to a couple who arrived 30 minutes later. No questions asked. Julia's mouth opened again, but nothing came out. Ben, seated at the second terminal, didn't even try to cover the fact that he was listening. Marcus stepped back, gathering everything. The ignored drink order, the surveillance camera shadowing his every step, the bar's fake registry update, and now the blatant room reassignment to someone who had the right look. He nodded once to himself, reached into his coat, pulled out his phone, and sent a message. One word: escalate. Then he put the phone away and walked out of the lobby without another word, knowing full well what was coming next. His phone buzzed in his coat pocket, and he knew, without checking, that the message he had sent moments ago had landed where it needed to. Inside, chaos was beginning to stir, but outside it was eerily calm. Marble planters lined with orchids framed the garden path that led toward the East Lounge entrance. Guests sipped cocktails beneath umbrellas, oblivious to the storm brewing within. Or so it seemed. What Marcus didn't know yet was that the storm had already started, and he was at the center of it. 10 minutes earlier, as he stood at the bar being refused service, a young employee named Devin, a part-time bellhop with too much ambition and not enough sense, had been lurking near the staff corridor, phone in hand, pretending to scroll. Devin had seen Marcus arrive. He had heard the whispers. He had witnessed the bar staff ignore him. And when Marcus walked away, calm but clearly fed up, Devin hit record. He caught the last interaction at the bar, then zoomed in discreetly as Marcus walked toward the front desk. Julia's reaction. The handoff of the key card to the white couple. Every slight was captured with shaky hands and a muted chuckle. But Devin didn't just post the footage. He added a caption. For words that would flip the internet in less than an hour. He doesn't belong here. Hashtag 5-star while black. The video exploded on TikTok within minutes. Then Instagram Reels. Then Twitter. The algorithm, ironically, showed no bias. It promoted rage. And this video burned like gasoline on a lit fuse. By the time Marcus returned to his suite, the clip had already reached 200,000 views. But it wasn't until someone posted a slowed-down version with subtitles that things escalated further. In the background audio, barely audible until enhanced, Travis, the assistant manager, could be heard whispering behind the desk moments after Marcus walked away. "We're not letting people like that ruin our aesthetic. That's not the kind of brand we cater to." The words came through clearly in the clip. People like that. Someone commented, "Say it louder, racist." Another, "This is how you lose everything in 2025. Then the quote took on a life of its own. Screenshots of the phrase, "not the kind of brand we cater to," began circulating as memes. A side-by-side image of Marcus in front of the hotel and the white couple receiving his room was captioned. Guess which one paid in advance? On Reddit, users dug up reviews from other guests, similar incidents, vague references to uncomfortable policies, and veiled language that now seemed less accidental and more endemic. By the time hotel management noticed the trending tag, it was too late. In a back office above the lobby, Travis leaned over Julia's shoulder, eyes locked on a laptop screen, showing a muted version of the video already shared across 4 platforms. "Tell me this isn't real," he said, though the disbelief in his voice was hollow. Julia clicked mute off, and the sound played. His voice, unmistakable, saying what they both hoped had stayed between them. She turned pale. "We need to get this taken down," Travis snapped, pacing. "We can flag it, report it, copyright something." "It's everywhere," Julia whispered. "There are reaction videos, duets, memes. It's already in the media cycle. People are calling for a boycott." "This is character assassination," Travis said, but his voice was cracking. He looked up toward the security feed, which was now focused on Marcus, who had returned to the upper floor lounge, sitting alone but composed, sipping water. "Get ahead of it," he muttered. "Issue a statement. Blame the system glitch. Say it was a miscommunication." "They heard you," Julia said, barely audible. "Your voice, clear as day. And they know who you were talking about." Meanwhile, Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't his contact from earlier. It was his assistant. A single message. "You've gone viral. We need to talk." He clicked the link. He watched the clip. His own face. His own voice. The bartender. Julia. And finally, Travis's voice behind the desk. The slow inhale he took afterward wasn't from surprise, but clarity. He hadn't planned on this going public. His intention had been silence with consequence. But now, the public had spoken, and they weren't interested in subtle. The digital wildfire spread faster than he could refresh. News aggregators began tagging the clip under #ModernSegregation. Influencers posted duet clips shaking their heads in disbelief. And a lawyer from the Equal Access Foundation tweeted, "If Mr. Knox needs representation, we're ready." By the time the sun dipped behind the skyline and the hotel's evening lights flickered on, the lobby was no longer a place of quiet luxury. It was a pressure cooker. Guests had begun murmuring. One asked Julia, "Was that the guy from the video?" Another demanded a refund. A third, with her phone held high, recorded herself saying, "So this is the place that turns away black guests and gives their rooms to white ones." Real classy. Travis stood in the hallway behind the reception desk, watching as a reporter from Channel 12 entered the lobby, camera operator in tow. "We'd like a comment," she said, ignoring his protest. "We've been following the story since it broke. Are you aware your manager's quote is now the top trending sound on TikTok?" He hadn't issued a single statement, but the public had made him a symbol, and symbols attract attention, both praise and danger. His phone continued to buzz relentlessly, group chats flooding with links, friends and investors offering support, some demanding he sue immediately, others urging him to keep calm and stay silent. He ignored most of them, except one. A message from his daughter's school. Confirmed. Elle arrived safely. She's waiting for you in the lobby. That grounded him. For all the digital chaos spinning around him, this was the one thing that mattered. Elle. His 9-year-old daughter, quiet, curious, always watching. Marcus stood, straightened his jacket, and took the elevator down. By the time he stepped into the lobby, the atmosphere had shifted again. More eyes followed him now, but not all with sympathy. Some guests had read the headlines, watched the clips, and sided with him. Others, entitled, threatened, or simply resentful, saw him as the one who had made a scene. At the far end of the grand atrium, he spotted Elle sitting near the concierge, swinging her legs gently from a velvet bench, a small tablet in her lap. She looked up and smiled the moment she saw him, her expression instantly softening the edges of his world. He walked over, knelt down to hug her, but just as he did, a sharp voice cut through the hush. "Well, if it isn't the man of the hour." Marcus turned slightly to see a heavy-set man in a tan golf jacket and loafers step forward from the lobby bar, drink in hand, eyes bloodshot. His tone was mocking. "Hope you're proud. Got the whole internet crying for you." Marcus straightened slowly, shielding Elle slightly with his body. "Is there something you'd like to say?" The man sneered. "Yeah, you people always find a way to play the victim. Maybe if you worked half as hard as you whined, you wouldn't need the whole damn internet handing you justice." Marcus didn't blink, but Elle flinched. The man took another sip, then scoffed. "What's wrong, little girl? You upset Daddy might lose his free ride." Elle's eyes welled up instantly, her lip trembling. Marcus stepped forward, his voice a low command. "Walk away, right now." The man raised both hands mockingly. "Hey, I'm just exercising my freedom of speech." "Then use it elsewhere," Marcus said, his tone cold enough to draw glances. The man hesitated, sensing he had crossed a line, and after a moment of silence, he backed away, muttering something unintelligible as he disappeared into the bar. Marcus turned back to Elle. She tried to wipe her eyes, but he knelt beside her again. "You okay?" She nodded, but the hurt lingered. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "We don't run from people like that. Ever." She looked up. "Did I do something wrong?" His throat tightened. "No, baby. They did." He escorted her to a private guest area, away from a crowd. A staff member, one who hadn't been involved in the earlier incident, offered orange juice and headphones. Marcus sat her down gently, then stepped aside to take a breath. That's when his phone buzzed again. A notification popped up, not from a contact, but a private number. No name. Just a message. You're making too much noise. Walk away before someone makes you. He stared at the screen. Another message followed. This place was peaceful before you brought your mess. Leave before it gets worse. He checked the sender ID, masked. But the signature on the account was familiar. The name matched a known back-end staff access tag used in the hotel's digital infrastructure. This wasn't random. This was from someone inside, or someone who had access to their system. Someone had spoofed a guest relations contact ID to intimidate him. He took a screenshot, then another, then forwarded it to his legal team with a note. Escalating. Confirm cyber harassment. Likely internal. He didn't flinch, but now he knew. This wasn't just personal bias anymore. It was a coordinated pushback. They had started losing control of the narrative and were trying to silence him by fear. Across the lobby, the assistant manager Travis reappeared briefly near the security desk, whispering urgently to two staff members. Marcus noticed. One of them glanced in his direction. The other tapped his tablet twice. Seconds later, the lights in the east corridor dimmed slightly, barely enough to register. But Marcus had spent his life noticing the slight shifts that came before larger power plays. They were trying to intimidate him with proximity, with presence, with control. But they had already failed once. And this time, they had brought his daughter into it. That was a line they couldn't uncross. Meanwhile, online momentum only grew. Journalists now dug deeper into the hotel's history, older incidents of guest redirection, quiet settlements, low-star reviews buried beneath positive ones. A former employee anonymously leaked screenshots of staff group chats where comments like "Don't waste luxury" on walk-ins and "Watch the hoodie crowd" had been casually exchanged. The public's fury reached a new peak when someone created a TikTok audio remix of Travis's voice saying "people like" that layered over footage of historical civil rights protests. It was no longer about Marcus alone. It had become a movement. And Marcus, now sitting silently beside his daughter, knew he had just been handed a choice: walk away with his pride or step fully into the storm with purpose. His phone buzzed again. This time, a message from a known name, a prince from the royal family of Al Sharif, whose foundation Marcus had advised the year prior. The message was brief. "We saw everything. We support you." Two men in black suits with the Marlowe Grand security crest approached from the far end of the hallway, walking with rigid posture, earpieces in, eyes locked on Marcus. He knew that walk. It wasn't casual. It wasn't a coincidence. He had seen it in boardrooms and backrooms, always used when power didn't want to ask, it wanted to control. One of them, the taller man with a scar under his left eye, gestured toward Marcus. "Sir, we need to speak with you privately," he said, tone measured but assertive. Marcus stood slowly, signaling L to stay seated. "Regarding what?" he asked, already sensing the answer. "There's been a report of suspicious behavior," the guard said. "We received an anonymous tip suggesting a guest matching your description was seen tampering with digital infrastructure near the East Maintenance Corridor." Marcus blinked, stunned not by the accusation, but by how carefully constructed it was. This wasn't sloppiness. This was escalation. He kept his voice even. "You're accusing me of attempting to hack your system?" The shorter guard added, "We're not accusing, just following protocol. Please come with us to the security office for clarification." Marcus glanced back at L, who was now looking up with worried eyes. "You expect me to leave my daughter alone while you clarify something that never happened?" Scar-Eye shifted his weight. "Sir, if you don't cooperate, we'll have to involve local authorities." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Call them," he said, "and I'll wait right here." A tense silence followed. The guards exchanged looks, unsure how to proceed. They hadn't expected him to push back, and certainly not with the kind of poised authority that drew the attention of nearby guests. One of those guests, a silver-haired woman seated near the fireplace, narrowed her eyes at the scene unfolding. She recognized Marcus from the now viral video. She also recognized the tone of the guards, the way their bodies positioned themselves around him, not like protectors, but like hunters preparing for permission to strike. Without saying a word, She reached into her handbag and pulled out her phone. She hit record. Moments later, 2 uniformed police officers walked through the lobby doors, alerted by hotel dispatch. One of them looked experienced, calm, in his late 40s. The other was younger, nervous, hand brushing the top of his holstered weapon, as if by habit. They approached the guards first, asking for details. Marcus stayed silent, arms crossed, chin high. The woman recording began to inch closer, audio catching everything. "What exactly is this man being accused of?" the older officer asked. The guard replied, "We have reason to believe he may have interacted with secure systems, possibly installed something under the guest Wi-Fi hub." "Do you have footage?" the officer asked. "We're reviewing it now," Scarai said. The younger officer looked uncomfortable. "So, you're detaining him based on a hunch?" "Protocol," the guard repeated. Marcus stepped in. "Let me be clear. I've spent the last 6 hours being profiled, displaced, denied service, watched, threatened, and now falsely accused. There is no evidence. There is no crime. There's only your discomfort with who I am and where I'm standing." The older officer paused. "Do you have ID?" Marcus handed him his license and corporate badge, embossed with the emblem of Knox Global Strategies. The officer looked at it, then at Marcus. "You're the guy from the video," he said quietly. Marcus didn't confirm or deny it. But the woman recording spoke now. "He didn't do anything. I've been sitting here for 20 minutes. He's been waiting with his daughter." These guards approached him unprovoked. The younger cop glanced at the phone in her hand, already streaming. "Ma'am, are you filming this?" "Yes," she replied. "Because I'm not letting this man disappear behind some door just because of the color of his skin and the cut of his coat." The officers exchanged a look. Then, finally, the senior one turned to the guards. "Unless you have solid evidence or a signed complaint, you have no grounds to detain this man. If you escalate without cause, we'll be filing the report instead." Scarai stiffened. "This is a private property." The officer snapped back. "And the law still applies here." At that moment, Marcus's phone buzzed again. It was a notification from a legal firm he didn't recognize. A link to a live post on a major news outlet. He clicked it. The headline read, "Black executive falsely detained in 5-star hotel while accompanying daughter. Streamed live by eyewitness." The article had embedded video, quotes from a woman, and even a blurry image of Elle sitting quietly in the background. The story had already gone national. Under it, sponsors were pulling ads from the hotel brand. Influencers were demanding investigations. The Marlowe Grand's official page was flooded with comments, all bearing one question: "Why are you still silent?" Back inside the security room, Travis watched the footage stream live on his own monitor and realized they had crossed a line they couldn't manage. No more polite statements. No more system errors. The world had eyes now. The story was no longer in their hands. No more waiting. No more testing character. The game had played long enough. He crouched beside Elle, whispered something soft to calm her, then stood up and stepped toward the tall glass doors of the lobby. Outside, the late afternoon sun was beginning to tilt golden against the skyline. He pulled out his phone, not to film, not to post, but to execute. A single contact. A single call. He didn't wait for a greeting. Just said 2 words, "Begin now." Then he hung up. No theatrics. No warnings. Inside the lobby, Travis was still in the security suite, trying to scrub what little digital traces he could before the corporate office made contact, while Julia kept refreshing the brand's social page only to see a new wave of #MarloweShame hashtags every minute. But then something strange happened. Guests near the windows began to murmur. People stood from their seats. A low hum emerged, not voices, but engines. Outside, a convoy of matte black vehicles turned into the hotel's private roundabout, each one gliding with military precision. At the front of the procession, 2 Mercedes G-Class SUVs bore small emblems on their hoods, embroidered flags with a gold falcon at the center. Behind them, a custom Maybach, its dark chrome body polished to obsidian, eased into position near the entrance. Hotel security immediately moved to intercept. but froze as they spotted the plates, diplomatic tags issued from the Middle Eastern Kingdom of Al Sharif, a nation known for its strict protocol, immense oil wealth, and tight-lipped royal family. The vehicle's engines stopped in unison. From the first SUV, a man in a sand-colored suit stepped out, his posture impossibly straight, his presence quiet but absolute. He scanned the hotel doors once, then adjusted his cuff, waiting. The second SUV opened next. A woman emerged in a headscarf, speaking rapidly into an earpiece in Arabic, then nodding toward the Maybach. Finally, the rear door of the limousine opened, but no one stepped out. Not yet. Inside, Marcus removed his coat slowly, folded it over his arm, and handed it to one of the staff who had stood quietly by his side ever since the incident with the police. Then he removed his glasses, wiped them once with a cloth from his pocket, and slipped them into a case with a monogram. MK Sovereign Division. He looked down at Elle. "You'll see something today that you'll remember forever," he said gently. She nodded without question. He took her hand and began walking toward the glass doors, past the front desk, past the guests still whispering, past the staff who now recognized his face from every device in the building. As he approached the entrance, the man in the sand suit stepped forward and opened the door, then bowed. "Hong then," he said in Arabic. "Your reception was regrettable. We are ready." Gasps rippled behind them. Travis, standing near the desk now, paled as realization dawned. Julia dropped the phone in her hand. One of the junior staff whispered, "He's royalty," but that word barely scratched the surface. Marcus Knox wasn't just a client or a VIP. He was a senior advisor to the Royal Court of Al Sharif, a consultant so trusted that he had been granted temporary sovereign immunity in 3 countries. His work included advising on clean energy transition, foreign investments, and building multi-billion-dollar hospitality networks between Europe and the Middle East. And this trip? It had been a final quality check, a first-hand audit to determine whether the Marlowe Grand and its parent company would be awarded a $1.2 billion hospitality expansion deal across 14 Gulf cities. Marcus stopped halfway between the glass doors and the car, then turned slowly toward the crowd now forming behind him. For those asking, he said quietly but clearly, "Yes, I booked the penthouse. Yes, I prepaid. Yes, I was refused service, accused without cause, and had my daughter insulted." He held up his phone, now displaying an open email from the Royal Treasury. Final approval pending Marlowe Group evaluation. This hotel was on the short list to become our global partner. But the moment your system flagged me as non-conforming, you lost the deal. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. There will be no appeal, no press bin, no polite statement, only silence and accountability. He turned again and walked toward the car. Before he stepped inside, he glanced once more at the glass doors. Behind them, Travis stood frozen, his mouth partially open, as if trying to form an excuse too late for a world that had already moved on. Marcus opened the rear door himself, helped Elle inside, and then followed, the vehicle closing behind him with a muffled click. The convoy began to roll out. No sirens, no announcements, just power wrapped in precision. What had begun as a viral scandal had now transformed into a full-scale media event. International outlets had arrived overnight. Press from the Middle East, Europe, and 3 major American networks had coordinated coverage. Drone cameras hovered discreetly overhead, catching wide-angle shots of the iconic hotel now wrapped in tension and shame. Inside, the lobby had been cleared by private request. The marble floors had been polished twice, and a stage had been assembled hastily near the main fountain, flanked by flags, one American, one royal. A podium stood at the center, a mic already live. At 10:02 a.m., a hush fell over the room as a security detail emerged from the elevator. Marcus stepped forward first, dressed in a tailored navy suit, no logo, no tie, just presence. Behind him followed 2 foreign dignitaries, a female interpreter, and a legal representative from the Royal Investment Authority of Al Sharif. There were no smiles, no nods, only focus. He approached the podium without preamble, placed a folded sheet of paper on the stand, and looked straight ahead. "I will keep this brief," Marcus began, his voice clear, steady, and broadcast live. "I am Marcus Knox, Senior Advisor to the Sovereign Court of Al Sharif, and for the past 12 months, I have been overseeing the final phase of a hospitality partnership evaluation between our Royal Development Council and potential U.S.-based service providers." He paused, letting the room breathe. The Marlowe Grand was on the verge of being selected as our flagship partner in a multi-phase hospitality expansion, estimated at $1.2 billion USD over a 10-year span. This initiative would have created over 14,000 jobs and linked 6 nations in a unified guest experience system rooted in equity, privacy, and luxury. However, that contract is now permanently withdrawn. A gasp broke from somewhere in the back, followed by rapid camera flashes. Marcus continued without blinking. "Why?" "Because what I experienced during my stay was not a mistake. It was not a system glitch. It was a culture. One that prioritizes appearance over humanity, wealth over dignity, and silence over accountability." He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a hotel-branded access card, the one originally tied to his penthouse reservation. He held it up. "This card, issued to me under my real name, under my verified identity, was revoked, reassigned, and replaced based on the unspoken assumption that I did not belong." He placed it flat on the podium. "I was surveilled, ignored, denied service, falsely accused of tampering with your systems, and publicly harassed while accompanied by my daughter. Your staff doubled down. Your leadership stood silent. Your AI did not fail, you programmed it to profile." Behind the cameras, Travis stood near the staff hallway, his skin ash gray, breath shallow, as the words cut through the room like knives. Marcus wasn't just presenting facts, he was delivering judgment. And the world was listening. Marcus continued, "We in Al Sharif do not invest in what is convenient. We invest in what is principled. Inclusion is not decoration. Dignity is not a marketing slogan. You were not being evaluated for how well you serve the powerful. You were being evaluated for how you treat the unseen, the unexpected, the unfamiliar." He leaned slightly forward. "You failed." Silence blanketed the room. No applause, no coughs, just reverence. Then he stepped back from the mic. The interpreter moved forward, translated his words fluently into Arabic for the live royal stream airing in his home country. As she spoke, Marcus walked toward the side of the stage where Elle stood next to a royal aide. He took her hand, and together they began walking out of the lobby for the final time. But just before reaching the doors, he turned back and added, "To those watching from afar, know that justice does not always shout. Sometimes it moves in silence, and by the time it arrives, the world has already changed." He nodded once toward the press, then stepped outside. Behind him, the news cycle detonated. Headlines flooded every channel. Billion-dollar deal canceled over racial profiling. Royal advisor humiliated. Responds with global consequence. Marlowe Grand loses partnership of a decade. Within minutes, Marlowe's stock began to plummet. The board of directors, previously unaware of the brewing scandal scale, released a panicked press statement filled with vague acknowledgments and hollow remorse. But it was too late. Several global investors announced suspension of ties pending review. A European labor union issued a statement of solidarity. Civil rights groups across the country began organizing peaceful demonstrations outside luxury hotels, using Marcus's quote, asterisk, "Inclusion is not decoration," asterisk, as their rallying cry. But perhaps the most crushing moment for the Marlowe Grand came an hour later, when a digital marketing firm leaked an internal document that revealed the AI system used to flag Marcus had been trained on biased datasets, with parameters that included style score, threat vector, and brand alignment, all of which disproportionately penalized guests of color, especially when dressed in minimalist or unbranded attire. That single document was the final nail. Overnight, the hotel's name became synonymous not with prestige, but with prejudice. By mid-morning, the Marlowe Grand's parent company, Marlowe International Hospitality Group, saw its stock value plunge nearly 30% on the New York Stock Exchange, wiping over $400 million from its market capitalization. Investors panicked. Analysts scrambled. Damage control turned into chaos. Financial outlets posted live updates, as if tracking a plane in freefall. Headlines flashed red on tickers. Marlowe Group faces collapse amid racial profiling scandal. Hospitality empire imploding after royal advisor fallout. But the true fallout wasn't just financial, it was systemic. That same day, the company's board of directors issued an emergency summons to all C-level executives, demanding accountability for the incident and a formal internal investigation into Marlowe Grand's operational protocols. At precisely 2:15 p.m., Travis Hensley, the assistant general manager at the center of the debacle, was called into the executive suite located on the top floor of the hotel. He walked in pale-faced, wearing the same suit from the day before, now wrinkled and clinging to a shell of authority that had long since vanished. Inside, a panel of 5 executives sat in silence, led by COO Meredith Grayson. She didn't rise when Travis entered. She didn't offer a greeting. She simply pushed forward a printed document, an official notice of suspension pending further review, citing breach of ethical conduct, violation of anti-discrimination policy, and reputational harm at an international scale. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" she asked flatly. Travis opened his mouth, but no words came. His tongue failed him. His authority was gone. Meredith continued, "We lost the Al Sharif contract. We lost 3 corporate sponsors. We've been blacklisted by 2 global travel consortiums. We've received withdrawal notices from 7 of our top-tier loyalty clients, and as of noon, all future bookings from the Royal Fleet have been canceled." She folded her hands. "You didn't just cost us money. You cost us credibility. You made us radioactive." Travis tried to defend himself. "It was a system," he said, grasping for the last thread of excuse. "The AI triggered it. We followed protocol." But Meredith raised one finger and said, "You made a judgment call. Your face was on the video. Your voice said, 'People like that.' That wasn't the system. That was you." With a final wave of her hand, she signaled security to escort him out. Cameras caught Travis leaving the hotel 15 minutes later through a rear exit. His ID badge already deactivated. His name deleted from the staff registry by sundown. But the purge didn't stop there. Julia, the front desk supervisor, was also placed on leave. 2 bar staff members were terminated after it was confirmed they had enforced unofficial visual standards when determining who to serve. The IT director who designed the guest screening algorithm resigned within hours, issuing a written apology for knowingly authorizing a profile-based scoring model that failed to uphold basic civil rights principles. By evening, the hotel chain had lost affiliations with 5 international airline partners and was delisted from several luxury hospitality directories. Beyond internal punishment, external backlash roared louder. Civil rights attorneys filed class action lawsuits against the hotel and its parent company, citing discrimination, emotional distress, and violation of federal equal access laws. Lawmakers in 3 states began proposing legislation to regulate AI-based guest screening systems in commercial properties. Meanwhile, companies that had previously partnered with Marlowe for events, conferences, and travel perks started issuing carefully worded statements announcing their exit. One by one, they dropped off. A Fortune 100 tech firm canceled its annual executive retreat. A global fashion brand pulled its co-branded line of Marlowe X designer luggage. A luxury travel app removed all Marlowe listings with a banner, temporarily removed due to allegations of discrimination. And while all this unfolded in corporate boardrooms and legal offices, the world outside had its own way of responding. Protesters gathered peacefully outside several Marlowe properties, holding signs that read, "We belong everywhere, you can't filter equality." And people like that built this country. Influencers led boycotts, urging their followers to book with inclusive brands instead. Hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus and #LuxuryWithoutPrejudice trended for 3 days straight. Even celebrities began weighing in, sharing their own stories of microaggressions in luxury spaces. Inside the hotel, the atmosphere shifted from luxury to liability. Staff members whispered in corners, unsure who would be next. Guest numbers dropped. Cancellations flooded the system. What once was a symbol of elegance had become a monument to exclusion. and no scent diffuser or marble fountain could mask the stench of exposed truth. Rooms that once required reservations weeks in advance now sat empty. Executive suites darkened. Conference halls echoed with silence. The grand chandelier in the main atrium still sparkled, but now it reflected only tension. 3 weeks after the storm had passed, when the headlines had begun to settle and the protests outside Marlowe Properties had quieted to a murmur, a different kind of story began to surface. Not viral, not explosive, but quietly human. Travis Hensley, the former assistant manager whose voice had sparked global outrage, reappeared not at a press conference or behind a polished statement, but seated in a plain chair across from a local journalist on a modest, low-viewership podcast. The episode wasn't advertised. It was uploaded without fanfare. Yet within hours, it began to circulate again, not because of scandal, but because of what he said. "I was wrong," he admitted. Voice raw, posture hunched forward as if the weight of what he had done had finally landed. "I thought I was protecting the brand. I thought I was doing my job. But the truth is, I saw a man I didn't expect in a place I didn't think he belonged, and I reacted with fear disguised as policy." He swallowed hard, eyes watering. "And I didn't just cost my company a contract. I cost myself my soul. I let a machine tell me who mattered. And I listened." The interviewer remained silent, allowing the moment to breathe. Travis leaned forward. "When I heard his daughter cry, I knew I'd gone too far. But I was too proud, too defensive to stop. I thought power protected me. But it just exposed how fragile I was without integrity." He ended with a whisper. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I really am." The clip was reposted, not to condemn, but to reflect. And for once, the comments weren't angry, they were contemplative. People debated accountability, redemption, what it meant to truly change. And while many refused to forgive, some saw in Travis not absolution, but the first step toward something better. Remorse without conditions. Meanwhile, far from the cameras and headlines, another life quietly transformed. Devin, the junior bellhop who had initially filmed the viral clip with reckless curiosity, had disappeared from the hotel shortly after the scandal broke. Many assumed he had been fired or faded into digital obscurity. But the truth was different. 1 week after the incident, he received an unmarked envelope at his apartment. Inside was a single note, handwritten on heavy paper. "You saw what others ignored, and you didn't stay silent. Let's see what you do with real opportunity." Below the note was a boarding pass, a contract, and a business card that read, "Marcus Knox, Sovereign Equity Group." Months later, in a newly launched boutique hotel on the outskirts of Atlanta, a young black man in a navy blazer greeted guests at the front desk with calm precision and quiet pride. On his lapel wasn't just a name tag, it was a plaque. Polished brass, engraved with one phrase, "Justice always wins." Devin had been given the tools, the training, and the trust to run something better. And he did, not out of vengeance, but vision. As for Marcus, he remained out of the spotlight. He returned to his work with the royal family, continuing negotiations, advising on global ethics frameworks, and mentoring a new generation of policy leaders. But occasionally he would pause, alone, and replay moments from that infamous day, not with anger, but with clarity. He understood something deeper now. Change never comes from one moment alone. It comes from a chain of reactions, from a choice to push back when it's easier to step aside, from a refusal to let dignity be optional. He had never wanted revenge. He wanted revelation, and he got it. Marlowe International survived, but it would never be the same. The board implemented sweeping reforms, overhauled hiring and AI screening protocols, launched mandatory anti-bias training worldwide, and issued a public charter titled, "Every Guest is a Story." They tried to rebuild, brick by brick, knowing some reputations don't recover, but perhaps people can. In a final quiet act, Marcus visited the Marlowe Grand one last time, years later, under a new name, after its acquisition by an equity group focused on social impact. No one recognized him. He stayed one night. The service was polite. The faces were diverse. The art on the walls featured black artists. And in the lounge, a framed quote hung near the window, where he had once been ignored. It read, "You don't rise by stepping over others. You rise by lifting them." The hotel had changed. Maybe the world had, too. And as Marcus checked out the next morning, he left behind nothing but his room key and the quiet legacy of someone who chose grace over vengeance, precision over fury, and truth over silence. The end. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful narratives about justice, identity, and redemption. What part of Marcus's journey hit you the hardest? Was it the silent strength he showed, the public fallout, or the final act of grace? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you think. And tell us, where in the world are you watching from?